Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of Be Well Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started Be Well Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment or medications if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here. Visit bewelltexas.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 265 of the Alamo Audible Podcast. This is your host, Jared Kalmus, joined as always by my co-host, Adrian Mutis, who is coming to us live from a hotel at the Rim in San Antonio. It's Thanksgiving week, baby. We make it work. We make it happen.
Yes, sir. We do indeed make it happen. We are broadcasting live from, well, we're not sponsored by the hotel, but from the Rim, from a residence here in the Rim. And I had to be very particular with how I scheduled or reserved my room. And I was specifically searching for suite style rooms because I needed a wall, I needed a door, I needed to recreate the most optimal podcast studio setup. Lighting, acoustics, all very important. Privacy, all very important. And I think we nailed that here. So we've got that. We've got a pretty good setup. I like to think that we're well lit. And I think the acoustics are pretty decent, Jared. I don't know. What do you think?
No, it sounds great. And okay. I have to admit to the listeners, before we started recording, we had you tilt your camera so people could tell you were in a hotel room. So yeah, the show goes on. The show does go on.
Well, absolutely.
The show went on for UTSA. Once again, they finished their regular season undefeated at home. 3-game win streak. And they're bowl eligible, man. Somehow,
right.
some way.
Talk about the show. Talk about the show goes on, baby. We got another game of Roadrunner football on the schedule this year.
Yeah, this is not like the last full episode of the season, as it sometimes is. And then, Adrian, it's been 5 years since that was the case for us. We have to be grateful. We have to be thankful for that.
5 straight years bowl eligible. That's every single year under Jeff Traylor. He has gotten this team bowl eligible.
And let's be honest, man. I mean, this consistency is something that we literally would dream about. Right? Like in the Coker eras, like I vividly remember talking with friends and being like, if we could just get to the point where a bowl eligibility is the expectation and we're in bowl season every single year, like we're going to build this program, we're going to build this brand, and we're watching it happen in front of our eyes, man. And I know like this season's been very frustrating. We've been frustrated in the pod. We've been frustrated at games. I think at this point, everyone can see the season should not have played out this way. Right. And it should have been a very different outcome, a very different win-loss record. In all honesty, UTSA should be in West Point this week playing for their bid to go to the conference championship game. That's the way the season should have played out. And it didn't, but let's not take for granted what we have here. Right. This has been a great run. Not the start we wanted. But man, the Traylor era just, overall keeps on delivering, even though, we have our moments, right? It's not going to be an 11-win season every year, right? Of course, but we've seen enough from this team and from these young guys to feel a pretty good sense of optimism. Going into Army this week, going into bowl season, going into the recruiting season, and then going into the 2025 season as well. So I'm feeling good about where we're at.
Yeah, you'd much rather have the improvement happen throughout the course of a season and finish much, much stronger than you started, rather than the opposite be the case where, what if this UTSA team comes out firing in September and October and then teeters off and has horrendous
North Texas. Which season would you rather have? We're probably going to finish with the same record because they have Temple this week.
Case in point. Perfect example, Jared.
North Texas fans are recording crying selfie videos in their car after games, okay?
And they're firing coaches. They're making staff changes. Yeah, I mean the roof is coming down, and this was a team that was very, very good just a month ago. Whereas at UTSA, people were calling for heads a month ago, and now we put this thing together. We might not see any coaching turnover, which that's a subject for another podcast. Sure. But it goes to show you that everything is coming together at the end of the season. This team has gotten better week over week, and albeit you still have the same issues somewhat that you've been having, but the execution from a football standpoint has gotten so much better week over week. And this team is now being able to outplay their mistakes. Funny enough, there were a lot of mistakes in this game against Temple. This game was weird. It was bizarre. UTSA played very far from well. They played very, very far from great. But Temple was just so bad that they were so bad that they kept themselves from getting into this football game, despite the mistakes that UTSA kept making. But look, Roadrunners are 3 for 13 on third down. We commit 9 penalties on the day. We turned the ball over 3 times, still managed to put up a 50 burger and run away with this thing. But sloppy overall, I think. And the record-setting night, yes, a lot of great things to take away from it. But at the end of the day, there was a lot of the same bonehead, to quote Jeff Traylor, bonehead mistakes that we had on the field. We really, really did, and it was sloppy for a final game in the Alamodome, man.
I'm going to try to explain this, and I don't know if I'm going to do a good job or not. But that game was a program win, not a team win, right? The team did not play very well, but the level of athlete that UTSA had on the roster, their preparation, that the whole staff, the analyst and all that, came up with, won out in the game, right?
Sure.
Like, in NCAA football, you can hit a button to like make the two teams equal skill levels, and then it's just like pure,
all about the sticks, baby.
All about the sticks. Yeah,
what you got.
Like I think like if you would have done that in real life for last week's game, like it probably would have been a 1-possession game, right? But UTSA just had too much talent, especially at the line of scrimmage, man. I mean, that mismatch between UTSA's defensive front seven and Temple's quarterback, running back, and starting 5 offensive linemen, just a massive, massive gap in talent, right? So like, no matter how bad UTSA screwed things up, they just one-on-one were better in every single regard.
Definitely,
right?
definitely. And we could not make enough mistakes to out bad Temple, right? We're just too good. It's too much talent. There's too many good football players on UTSA to make enough mistakes to out bad Temple. So that's sort of what happened, man. I love the perspective that you bring to Roadrunner fans on that soliloquy to start off this episode, Jared, because perennial 500 seasons was a pipe dream to UTSA just a few years ago. And Jeff Traylor in his 5 years here at the helm has completely turned that on its head. And we do expect to be better than 500. We do expect bowl invitations as a given. Which is crazy because we almost don't deserve to have that sort of expectation in such a short tenure as a football program and as a fan base. But we do. And you got to chalk it up to Traylor, the job that he's done as a coaching staff.
I'm glad you brought up the whole like actually getting to a bowl with 6 wins thing. I went to the Houston alumni watch party, and one of the guys there, all night long, he was just like terrified that we were going to have our 6th win and still get left out of bowl season, right? Because there's always the chance that more teams are bowl eligible than actually get invited. And I was like trying to calm him down. I'm like, dude, we're past that point. Like, we're in the American now. We sell tickets, we draw TV eyeballs. Like, I don't think that'll ever happen to UTSA again. Like, I'm not going to say never, but it's very, very unlikely.
But it did happen. It did happen. For those of y'all that just started watching UTSA football and we were winning conference championships, there was once upon a time where a 6-win UTSA football team was snubbed from a bowl invite.
Yeah, and it's happened at Texas State once or twice as well, right? I think North Texas got in on grades one time on the APR score. We know Rice has been in several times with that. But those were 5-win teams, actually. Those weren't 6-win teams.
5-win teams. Yeah, those were 5-win teams. And UT got in, I remember that. So we have come a long way as a football team and as a fan base. And so we have that now. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean, and so you have to give Jeff Traylor and his staff credit for doing that, but that does not mean we cannot come on this podcast and have our critiques that are very, very much valid with how this team's been performing or not performing in certain fields, certain parts of the game. Big one of them is penalties.
Yep.
It's outrageous. It's outrageous. Jared, this team wins at the line of scrimmage in an incredible fashion. It's kind of the first thing you pointed to. I think we've got to talk about that as the main reason why UTSA won the day was just physical dominance up front, especially defensively. Jamori Robinson set school records for sacks and for tackles for loss. Well, he tied the school record for 4 sacks, and 5.5 tackles for loss was a school record. So he eclipses Robert Singletary's 4.5 tackle for loss record in 2014. That record has stood for 10 years. And Marlon Smith, 4 sacks in one single game in our inaugural season, Jared. 2011, that record has never been broken. And it was only tied. Still not broken. Inaugural season 2011. So pretty incredible stuff. But Jamori Robinson, dude, really, really tremendous. And it's really funny because in the preseason, whenever we had him on, or in the offseason, whenever we had him on the podcast, he talked about he was coming for Trey Moore's single season sack record. And he's pretty far away from that prior to the Temple game. But then he gets to the Temple game and like he has like 2 sacks in the first quarter. I'm like, oh my gosh. What if all of a sudden he's going to like break Trey Moore's record? Well, what if he has 10 sacks today?
He's probably not going to break that record, but he still has a record that Trey doesn't have, right? He has that single game record, which is super cool.
Single game record is impressive, man. And it looked like there for a second that he was well on his way having 8 sacks against Temple on Friday night. But it was and it wasn't just Jamori, man. It was by committee, pass rush by committee on Friday night, dude. Just really, really electric stuff from the entire crew of guys. But Jamori Robinson made it home. He made it home for those sacks, just unbelievably.
He had some very impressive ones as well. There was one that he ran down the quarterback all the way from the backside of the play and, pretty much went sideline to sideline to catch their quarterback and bring him down.
Saw him leaping and diving, covering space with his body in the air, knowing that like his jump ability, like he thought about it and he knew his jump was enough to cover that ground and bring down the quarterback. It was nice, dude. It was really nice to watch that in slow motion.
Yeah, you just see him continue to improve, right? His best football is still ahead of him, right? I think he's going to get to the next level. I don't know if he's going to get drafted, but I think with his physical ability, right, he's going to get a chance for sure as an undrafted free agent. And I think you're going to see him develop, right? The glory of these ESPN2 broadcasts is like when I do my film breakdowns, I get so many good camera angles to look at, like, those high angles, the end zone angles and stuff like that. So I could really see his pass rush moves, and he was using a multitude of pass rush moves that,
bro.
When he first got to UTSA, I mean, it was just speed rush, right? He was just using his raw, God-given talents. But now you see him really developing as a pass rusher, right? And that's cool to see. I mean, he's not the first or last guy that UTSA's developed like that. Like people were joking about tight end U, but they kind of are defensive line U. To be honest. So that was great to see, man. And he wasn't the only one. Cyrus Simon's the same way as well. He's really come on late in the season, and he's been a good player for UTSA for a long time, but he's just really, he found another level, right? Cyrus had a sack where he did like a stab move where like you take your off arm and you like jab it up into the chest of the offensive lineman so you gain full control over them and you can just run right around them. Like that was beautiful, dude. That was so
filthy.
Cool.
It was filthy, kind of manhandled. But the athleticism of Jamori Robinson was on full display. I mean, he was swimming at the line of scrimmage. Sometimes he was faking guys out and like getting around the line of scrimmage without even getting touched. Yeah. Oh my gosh, man. Like, you really, really saw him put on a show. But a whole cast of guys really causing backfield havoc. Martavius French, 2 tackles for loss. Owen Pee-wee, 1.5 tackles for loss. Jamal Ligon. Cyrus Simon, he got in there for a sack. Cameron Cooper got in there for a sack. Brandon Brown out there with a tackle for loss. I mean, like everyone was blowing up the backfield. It was a very, very chaotic night for Temple's backfield, man. Like
so much havoc, man.
They had nowhere to look. I mean, by the time the ball was snapped, they had nowhere to go. It was incredible how fast things were just collapsing down back there.
I think the second play of the game, I think Temple ran like a little like short toss to the sideline.
Mhm.
And by the time the running back actually touched the football, there were 7 Roadrunners at least across the line of scrimmage, and a couple of them were like 5 yards deep in the backfield. I mean, they really had no chance. There is nothing they could have ran that would have given them a shot. You know, you saw them start to do some draw plays, some screen plays, and they had some success with that. But UTSA really adjusted, and they started to sniff that stuff out. And you know, Temple had no answer. They couldn't hang, man. Honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. 3 and out on that first drive, and it just kind of set the tone. They were getting stopped in the backfield a whole lot, man. Really, really incredible stuff from the Roadrunners defense. But yeah, again, wasn't all roses. You know, we had our mistakes. Jared. But I think in particular on defense, they had a much cleaner game than the Roadrunners offense did. Jamori Robinson, the front seven, tremendous, but also UTSA secondary. Zay Frazier with another hell of a day. 2 interceptions on the day again. I mean, he sets a single season interception record on the year, Zay Frazier.
Yeah, it's so cool that he has 6 picks on this year, and they came in 3 games.
Yeah.
He had 3 games, he got 2 interceptions in. Like, that's pretty phenomenal. It's a pretty cool stat. Like, at some point, it probably won't be that long. Someone's going to have 7 interceptions in a season, I'm sure. But I don't know. It's going to be a while, I feel like, before someone has 3 multiple interception games in a single season.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare.
3 2-pick games is filthy.
Yeah. And
it's
both
really,
of his
really
picks
nice.
in this game were very impressive. His first one, he was right there on the sideline. You know, I feel like the refs initially called it incomplete because they're like, there's no way that someone can have that little space on the sideline and actually like get a toe in. Zay got both toes in. He made an NFL catch on that interception, which was wild. And then on the second one, he actually got beat. You know, he was playing like a deep zone, and I think he was probably watching the quarterback's eyes a little bit too much. And the receiver ran a post route. So Zay had to kind of use his makeup speed to catch back up to the receiver. Ball was underthrown a little bit, and Zay just goes up and, you know, he high points the football and just kind of wrestles the receiver down to the ground and rips it away from him, man. Just a very, very physical play and a good showing of how sometimes in football you get beat initially, but if you have the athleticism, you can make up for that, right? And that play was a perfect example. You know, Zay say after he went through senior day, even though he's a redshirt junior, and he said, "Yep, I'm looking to go to the league."
Go to
and
the
I think
league,
he's
baby.
ready. It's time.
I think he's ready. I think he's ready. Absolutely. No doubt about it. This guy could get his name called.
Yeah, his combine numbers are going to be crazy. He's so fast, you know, not sure strength-wise, but he's got the wingspan. I mean, someone's going to take a chance on him.
And it's crazy because, like, all of a sudden these last 3 weeks or in this last month, all of a sudden Zay Frazier's been getting his attention. He's put the pundits and the national football watching landscape on notice out of nowhere. But he gets these accolades from East and West Shrine Bowls, giving him Player of the Week, and he's getting all these accolades in the press. So, yeah, it's like all of a sudden he's put everybody on notice, and the guy deserves it. Yeah, he's ready to go, man. He's totally ready to go.
We were just saying about how Cyrus Simon and Jamori Robinson have been developed as pass rushers. You got to say the same thing for cornerbacks at UTSA as well. I mean, it started with Tariq Woolen. Cam Alexander was pretty good before he got to UTSA, to be fair, but he got to another level with Coach Graham, and now I think we're seeing it with Zay Frazier, and I think if Denver Harris comes back next year, I think we'll see a similar jump from him as well. Right? He had a good season, but he's got more in the tank for sure.
Way more, for sure.
Yeah,
it's a single game program record, and it's actually a record that this defense set themselves just a month ago against Tulsa. But 16 tackles for loss is now single game program record. 16 tackles for loss, 15 tackles for loss against Tulsa last month. So this defense set their own record, breaking the own records that they set. The streak of consecutive UTSA football games with both a sack and a takeaway is now at 21 football games for UTSA.
It's going to be hard to do this week against Army, so we'll see.
What's going to be harder to get against Army, the sack or the takeaway?
Man, maybe the sack.
Okay. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That was going to be my answer.
Because that has to be a passing play.
Yeah, there's not too many of those.
Yeah. So we'll see. Who knows? If it's been 21 games, like they had to have done it against Army at some point, 21 games, right?
Man, yeah, because Army was definitely 21 games ago when we played them last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which they threw the ball a lot against us that particular evening.
That's true.
Yeah. Jared, any down parts to the defense
Freaking Danye, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Another personal foul. So dumb.
What's that streak at? Gotta be 10. It's a bad one. It's another egregious one. We talk about it every single week, a Danye Taylor personal foul.
Just out of control.
And it messes up the game.
And Owen Pee-wee plays so well, too. I mean, God. I don't know. It's just very frustrating. There's nothing else to say. I mean, people watch the games. Like, we don't need to tell them what their own eyes are telling them as well.
It's nuking the flow of the game for the Roadrunners. It's completely compromising what this team's able to get done.
Yeah. Right. I don't know. That's pretty much it on the defense. I guess the only other thing, Dipper Harris got burned pretty bad on one play. He was probably supposed to have some safety help on that play, but the route the tight end ran kind of pulled the safety's attention. So, I don't know. But honestly, I rewatched that play and I'm like, damn, that receiver kind of popped off on that one. Like, he flew off the line. It was a pretty good route from the receiver. So
true.
Yeah, not the end of the world. When you play an aggressive defense like UTSA does, you're going to give up some of those, right? So I'm not too stressed about it. That's pretty much all I can think of. I mean, they had a couple of run plays they gave up that were less than ideal, but nothing to be concerned about, I'd say.
No, not at all. I mean, a lot of what Temple was able to do by way of points on the scoreboard was just because of favorable situations that they found themselves in.
Yeah.
This Temple offense had 27 points on just 289 total yards.
That's crazy.
They didn't.
They didn't have any special team scores. They didn't have a defensive score either.
No.
Yeah, they
were able to find themselves in very fortunate situations by way of UTSA mistakes. And as we switch sides of the football, offense is where most of these mistakes occurred for the Roadrunners on Friday. It was a sloppy game from UTSA's offense. Nothing ever really gelled together. When you saw us out talent them, but we never looked like we were firing. We never looked like we were firing cohesively.
They totally got by on big explosive plays, right? And a lot of those were just clear mismatches or just Temple being bad. Like Robert Henry's 87-yard run he had or whatever. Just what was Temple doing on that play? I couldn't tell you. The linebacker just ran to go tackle someone who didn't have the ball. You don't want to take too much away from UTSA because they executed. They did what they were supposed to do. But against a good team, you're not going to get 87 yards on that play. You know what I mean?
It's true. And that kind of happened throughout the game. Big explosive plays that you're able to take advantage of, but there was a lot of plays in between it that just kind of were broken, falling apart. Owen McGowan and his communication with his receivers was pretty poor. There was not a lot of synchronicity. You saw receivers in the wrong spot. You saw balls being thrown in the wrong spots. It looked like both parties were kind of guilty. I don't think that Owen necessarily had a bad day, but he didn't have his best day. Mm-hmm. I don't think that UTSA's receivers were far from their best day. A lot of drops, a lot of bad routes ran. Owen made a couple bad decisions, and a couple balls got away from him. Mm-hmm. Whatever.
But again, here we are complaining about 51 points of scoring output.
Yeah, we had 51 points. We had 51 points on huge plays where the speed and the talent was really shining. It was on full display.
Yeah,
that's fine. 51-27 is a more gracious difference than what this game actually looked like on the field. The game was a little bit closer than it should have been for a long time. Not a big deal.
Yeah, it's just UTSA didn't play well. They had the talent to beat one of the worst teams in the country, So, I don't want to be too harsh. But to hone in a little bit on the passing game miscues, there were 2 interceptions. Both came off tip passes, which is crazy. I feel like Owens had so many of those this year. I mean, I don't have the numbers around me, but what's he thrown maybe 8 interceptions this year? I would say 5 of them came on tip passes, just off the top of my head. I could be pretty off on that, but the first one that was not Owen's fault. Just complete miss from Chris Carpenter on that one. I've rewatched that play a couple of times because I'm like, man, that ball's right there. Chris tried to body up the cornerback, like pretty much like ran into him and like blocked him essentially, and then tried to like, contort his body to like get positioning like a boxing out in basketball.
Yeah, like he was kind of boxing him out.
And I'm like, dude, you're like 5'9", $150, dude. you don't even run those routes, man. Like, leave that to the tight ends. It was really strange. And like when he did that, it gave the defensive back like free reign essentially to, grope him essentially.
Make that contact,
yeah. Yeah. So like when the offense hits you first, you can mug up on them, right? And that's exactly what happened. And that ball got tipped and fell to the defense. So that one I'd say was definitely on Carpenter. I don't think Owen did anything wrong there. But the second one, that one came off Overmeyer's hands. That one I think is maybe like 60-40 Owen's fault, right?
Could have been tighter, yeah.
Yeah, it was off the mark, right? So Overmeyer had to leap for it. And it's pretty high. And Patrick's 6'6" too. So if he had to jump for it, it's pretty dang high. But also there were 3 guys in the vicinity when Owen threw the ball. So even if it was on target, it's probably still not the pass you should have made there. Like surely someone else was more open. But I'm still of the mindset that if the ball hits the receiver in the hands, you got to get it. You
got to come down with it. You got to come down with it.
At least prevent it from going off your hands to the defense. Like if you got to knock it down or something,
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. I'd agree with you on that accord. So I was there, and I think, it's one of those things too where unfortunately it happens a lot where you kind of play to your competition level. Does UTSA play down a little bit whenever they're going up against a Temple school that they ought to beat? Yeah, probably so. Maybe a little bit. Senior night in the Alamodome. It's also the second game in a row they've had to play on a Friday night.
Yeah.
Also kind of strange for a team to have to do. But yeah, they got it done by way of 51 points. They did exactly what they needed to do. They got their bowl eligibility. I mean, it was a successful day on offense, but more errors than this team ought to be making their 11th game of the season, right?
Yeah, even though UTSA is not going to win a championship this year, I think we still have to hold them to championship standards because they are that level of team, and they've shown that, through spurts this season. So I don't want to drop my expectations per se. I mean, I think we still have to hold them to that, right? And the way they played on Friday, I mean, they wouldn't have beat Memphis. They probably would not have even beat North Texas. I don't think
so. I don't think so.
Not a great showing. One area that was good though, and it was improved. It was the best rushing attack of the year for the Roadrunners. They ran for over 300 yards. I got 309 on the stat sheet.
178 from Robert Henry, 75 from O. McCown, 40 yards from Brandon High Jr. And then there's a couple of other contributors there. But those are your main culprits. Yep. Robert Henry, 16 carries on the day. Yeah, he has that 88-yard long run, but he had several big runs for like gashing first downs and large runs kind of throughout the day. Not an open field to work with. Is that because we were winning the line of scrimmage? He had big holes to run through. Robert Henry also kind of looked like he was hitting them hard. It looked like he was
both, I would say.
He looked quick.
After the North Texas game, we were like, the box score is misleading. Because if you look at the box score, you're like, oh, UTSA ran all over them. The running game is fixed. We didn't feel that way actually watching the game. But in the Temple game, I thought they ran the ball really effectively. I thought the blocking was a lot better. It wasn't great. I mean, I would give it like a C+ at best. But there were opportunities there. There were holes there. Absolutely, Robert Henry's hitting the hole harder. In fact, my friend Matt cracked me up because he said Robert Henry's running like he got stem cell treatment or whatever. What's that treatment called? I'm totally fucking out. I ruined this joke. I feel so bad.
Stem cell?
Yeah, stem cell treatment. Like, didn't they do that with Tiger Woods? Like, his back and his knees are all messed up, and they like injected him with stem cells.
He was bursting, man. He had a different burst, and he was dashing. He looked very, very quick. And I guess he looked quick against UNT as well, but he looked fast as hell. And I don't know if Temple was just that much slower. Robert Henry did look fast running the ball. And
he carried the pile in a couple plays, too.
O. McCown looked fast, too, on his 75-yard run, which is the largest rush from a quarterback in UTSA history.
Another thing that Owen McCown's got over Frank Harris, man.
He just tends to do this week over week. He tends to find some superlative. he seems to find, he has like this list of all the superlatives that Frank Harris did not achieve or that he's able to beat him. And he just does it every single week. He's breaking one of them. I'm like, how is this guy doing
it's
this?
weird, dude. It's so
It's
weird.
weird, but Owen McGowan has a kind of a laundry list of accomplishments that Frank doesn't at this point. It's kind of crazy.
Speaking of the running game, Adrian, it blew my mind that this is the first time in program history that UTSA had back-to-back 300-yard performances on the ground.
That is insane to imagine when you think about like the running back rooms that we've had over the years between Sincere McCormick
and some of the weak schedules that we play too,
Darby Williams. None of those guys, none of those guys had the back-to-back 300-yard performances. Like with Frank running the ball too and Dalton running the ball too. I mean, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Surprise stat of the day for sure.
Yeah. So I picked on Chris Carpenter a little bit. You got to give him his kudos. Obviously, he had the kickoff return for a touchdown, right? Shout out to Cam Cooper had a pancake block on that one that was beautiful. He had a great game.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Vic Shaw, man, those two guys, they got something cooking. Keep an eye on that, Chris had one of the weirdest games I've ever seen from a single player. I've got him with the drop pass that led to the interception. And then he comes back and he throws a crazy block on Owen's touchdown. I mean, I was just saying, Carpenter is a tiny guy, and he was blocking the guy that was on him, and he actually blocked that guy into another defender, and that's how Owen was able to score, right? So that's half a touchdown to Chris right there. Then he had a muff punt.
Weird.
Really bad. It was a really
Very
bad muff punt,
strange.
right? And
Great
then he has a kick return for a touchdown. I mean, it's just a lot of weird stuff, man. He had his cleats taped up like they were Chuck Taylor's. Maybe that's why things were a little kooky.
It was a strange game for Chris. Very, very emotional game for Chris.
Mm-hmm.
But a really, really beautiful kickoff return on that touchdown, man. I mean, like he turned it on, hit the burners, saw the field really, really well, and then was able to keep his balance from tripping up whenever he got a little bit tripped up by the kicker.
Yeah.
It was impressive. Gosh, he made a lot of mistakes, and it was kind of a beautiful microcosm of his entire season that he's had this year.
His career,
where he's just got his whole career, where he just has these amazing moments and great big plays, but then he does like some very head scratching things too, where we're just not quite sure what happened to Chris Carpenter.
Honestly, this whole game was a micro. I was going to save this to the end, but this whole game was a microcosm of the 2024 season for UTSA.
UTSA, absolutely.
Super talented. They're better on paper than the teams they're playing against. Great defensive front, suffocating defense, but they can't get out of their own way. They make too many mistakes. They don't play up to their standards. They play down to their opposition. They play up to their opposition if they're good.
Yep.
Receivers aren't great. Run blocking is not great. It's like everything about this team. It just showed up, and it was what it was. This team is who they are. You know what I mean? It was just funny to see how it play that way.
It's crazy. Like the spectrum that is the UTSA Roadrunners this year, but getting in their own way is so perfectly said, Jared. Yeah, another 9 penalty game for UTSA. 3 for 13 on third downs against Temple it's pretty egregiously bad, man.
Yeah.
Especially after you converted 56% of your third downs against North Texas just a week before. You don't even convert 25% of first downs against Temple. It's crazy. David Amador also with another big day, Jared. Was the team's leading receiver with 7 receptions at 63 yards on the day. Had a 33-yard long one as well. Definitely was the utility knife for the Roadrunners offense whenever things were slowing down, whenever you needed something to happen. David Amador was open to get you that first down catch that you needed and get the chains moving. So again, David Amador now healthy and a very lethal part of this offense, very critical part of this offense. And you could say behind Robert Henry, probably had the best game on offense.
Yeah, I was thinking about that coming this one. Like, Owen didn't play great. I would say maybe CJ James might have had the second best game. It's like I really can't think of anyone else that can make the claim. So I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
He had a very, very great play on like a middle screen. Like Owen threw like a sidearm pass to him on that play.
Mm-hmm.
And it was David had one of those last week as well, or the previous week, I guess I should say, where he catches the ball and there's like 3 or 4 dudes around him, and he still finds a way to get like 15 yards. And what I really loved about this most recent play against Temple was David did a great job of like, covering up the ball with both hands and, just shielding the football to prevent the fumble. It's easy to forget how young he is. He really plays like a veteran out there.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. Well said.
Adrian, last thing I've got for this game is the illegal procedure penalties on UTSA 2 weeks in a row because Jalen Garth is lined up off the line of scrimmage is one of the most mind-boggling things I've ever seen from a football team. And what's even worse is, Andre Ware was broadcasting the game, and he also had the UNT game the previous week as well. He said on the broadcast that he had talked to Jeff Traylor about that last week, and then Garth still did it like he got called 2 or 3 times, but he did it several other times as well. I think the refs are like, we can't throw a flag on this every single play.
He's just,
what I mean?
He doesn't know any better. We don't know. Yeah.
God,
I don't know.
So they felt bad for him.
Yeah.
I was like,
crazy.
I don't understand how you can have like this full coaching staff. You got all these analysts and all that. Like, they've got guys up in the booth watching the TV broadcast. They've got the tablets where they're reviewing plays.
Mm-hmm.
How does this not get fixed, man?
This is one of those things, man. Talk about recurring issues. I think that's like been the scariest part of this Roadrunners team is that like the same problems continue to go unresolved.
Yeah.
It's so bad. It's such poor job from Jeff Traylor and his staff to have recurring problems at this magnitude.
I have not failed to notice that all the people that have said that this is a great coaching job by Jeff Traylor to turn the season around are like outsiders that don't watch all the games.
Correct.
Right.
Same penalties committed by the same guys, same calls being made in moments where they probably don't need to be, and getting cute whenever they don't need to be.
Oh, we didn't talk about that 4th down. That was a terrible call. Terrible call.
Or for what? For what?
And like that could have been a cool play. I hate to waste that on a 4th and 1 where it's not going to work.
Getting cute, getting tricky. It happens. It happens. These things happen very consistently. And it's egregious that it's been going unsolved. And the bad thing about how well UTSA is playing is that there are going to be problems that they get away with because of their turnaround in November, because of them making a bowl game, because of now seeing the praises of the turnaround this team has had. The problems that really need to be addressed are going to get swept under the rug, and they are being swept under the rug. We're seeing it. We're seeing it happen right before us, and that's scary for a team going into 2025. That should be really, really good.
Yep,
they're going to get in their own way. They're going to get in their own way. My last thing, Jared, is Tate Sandell field goals from 47 and 42 yards out. Unbelievable week in and week out. He's hitting multiple deep 40-yarders like butter.
Great to see Chase Allen get out there on senior night and hit a field goal as well. He nailed that one. So it was awesome to see.
Good call.
And, I don't think we really talked about this, but it was just cool to see the seniors across the board play so well on senior night, man.
Mm-hmm.
We've already listed a ton of them. Justin Rodriguez got to catch a kickoff and return it a couple of yards. So that's great, man. That's really cool to see. And UTSA always tends to play well when it's senior night in the Alamodome. Frank Harris had one of his best games ever against USF on that senior night. So it's cool. It seems to really mean something to the guys, and I'm glad it was a successful game, even though it was kind of a sloppy one.
First time UTSA has dropped a 50 burger since 2022, Jared. Feels good.
Wouldn't guess that. 10
Big
straight wins at home,
numbers.
man. What? Wow. Crazy.
Yeah.
Dream of days like this.
Crazy.
Well, Adrian, I'll cut us over to Cumbia break, and we can preview this top 25 matchup against Army. It's very exciting. Before we do, just want to say thank you, a special thank you on Thanksgiving week to all of our Patreon supporters who have continued to support us throughout the season and throughout the years for many of you guys. That includes our Board of Trustees members, Tiji Teak, John Otwell, Gary and Ruben represent the UTSA Bird Gang Tailgate, Ray Redding and Meet Me Apparel, Brandon Grill and the Grill Realty Group, Andy Elzada at Proficient Benefit Solutions, Ian McClendon and Secret LLC, Javon Townsend, president of the DFW chapter of the UTSA Alumni Association, Ryan Squares, Waterman Construction, UTSA Annual Giving, Artisan Vapor and CBD, Wayne Gonzalez, and the Runners Rising Project. So we'll kick you guys over to a quick commercial break, and we'll see you back in just a little bit to talk about the Army Black Knights. All right, Adrian, it's the final game of the regular season. UTSA travels to West Point, New York, whereas around lunchtime today, when I checked the weather forecast, it won't be snowing on Saturday, but it will be snowing on Friday. It's going to be a very, very cold game for the Roadrunners. That's a new element they'll have to deal with is that cold weather. I think I saw like 29 to 37 degree high and low range. So you very, very easily could get some I never say that word right. Precipitation. There we go.
Precipitation.
I always try to say participation. Anyways, where that could turn a still game pretty quickly on CBS Sports. So keep an eye on that. That'll be interesting. But our Army's an opponent that's just really had UTSA's number. If you were to go through like winspd.com and look at UTSA's record against, fellow Group of 5 schools, I think Army probably has one of the best win-loss records against the Roadrunners of any team in the Group of 5. They're 3-1 of the Roadrunners. But, Adrian, the only win that UTSA has managed against the Cadets came in West Point in a really great overtime matchup that I was fortunate enough to be in New York for and got to see Frank Harris throw one up to JT Clark in the back corner of the end zone for the game-winning touchdown.
That's correct.
It's a good stat for UTSA to know that while they've gotten handed to them in the Alamodome, they have 1-1 up in West Point.
The only time we've ever been to West Point, Jared, it was a win. We are undefeated in West Point, New York, as the official record has it. Yeah, that was 2022. And now you are looking at the number 25 team in the country, Jared. Are they number 19 on the number 25 on the AP poll? Is that right?
So they're 25 on the AP poll. I'm not certain they're still going to be ranked in the college football playoff poll, but that won't come out until Tuesday. We're recording this Sunday night, so we'll see. If UTSA can pull it off, I would still consider it a rank win because our Army's been ranked like almost half the season.
Yeah.
Right. So I think if they're top 25 in the AP, we can call it a legit one.
Yeah. I think it's got to be an AP. So wow, where to really start with this 9-1 Army Black Knights team? This is the best team Army has fielded in, gosh, how long, Jared? I mean, when was the last time Army was like this unbeatable, seemingly unbeatable?
I don't know. Before my time, really.
Definitely so. But throughout the American Athletic Conference, like they haven't just been winning their games, but they've been giving it to teams. I mean, they've really, really kind of been laying it down. And this is a team that's consistently scoring 40-plus points throughout the American Athletic Conference. And handily dominating opponents. I mean, no one's really given them too close of a game, too tight of a game. UNT beat them 14-3, but even I don't think that final score was very indicative of like how the actual game played out.
Yeah,
Army was in control.
The whole game.
Army was in control the whole game.
Army had them in a stranglehold.
Absolutely.
The whole game. Yeah, 100%.
So, they're already a shoe-in to play into the conference championship game.
Guaranteed. Already
Guaranteed. Yeah, it's Tulane versus Army. So UTSA doesn't really get to spoil anything in that regard. But they can't go in there and get their 7th win of the season. They can go in there and they can hand Army their potentially first conference loss of the season. Where do you even start whenever you're looking at how good this Army team is?
Well, I guess you got to start with Bryson Daly. I mean, he's the best player that Army's had in a decade, maybe. I don't know. They call him Captain America, and he plays up to that nickname 100%. 6 foot, 220-pound Just one of the most muscular quarterbacks you'll ever see. Guy's built like a tank. He plays like a tank. And he's fast. He's got some speed to him for sure. But his power and his bruteness. I mean, he runs like a fullback. Like he seeks out contact. He will run you over. He's very tough. He moves the pile forward. It's tough kid, man. The pride
West
of
Texas
Abernathy,
boy.
Texas.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
Abernathy, Texas, man.
Yes, sir.
No other FBS offers as a quarterback. I think there were some schools that wanted him as a linebacker. SMU was kind of dangling the last roster spot for him. It ended up getting a guy to the transfer portal instead. And Daly ends up at Army, did a year in the prep academy, waited his time, and now he's a machine, man. He's ran for 23 rushing touchdowns this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, his combined offensive output was 233 yards over UTSA in the Alamodome last year, 133 yards through the air with the touchdown, 100 yards on the ground with his legs and a touchdown. So UTSA has gotten their dose of Bryson Daly before. This is going to be our first rodeo with him. Yeah,
definitely. Just playing at a different level now. And I think the offense has just evolved for Army, right? Like, they did that experiment, when they banned the cut blocks outside the tackle box. They were like, we need to spread it out a little bit more and play a little bit more like Air Force does. And that just didn't really work out for them. When UTSA played them at West Point, they threw the ball like 30 times or whatever. Like, yeah, they scorched us, but they lost that game. It wasn't Army football, and I've read a really cool quote from Coach Munkin where he was like, when we were playing that way, I didn't feel like we had control of the game, right? And he's like, I felt that way for almost every other game, every other season that I've coached at Army. So you see them revert back. They're going under center more often. They do go to shotgun. They do throw the ball, right? It's not all, old school Service Academy, flex bone, dive pitch kind of deal. Like, they will spice it up, but they still play very traditional, and they play very loyal to the Army brand of football that we're all accustomed to.
Yes, indeed. And you kind of said something good there, talking about when we played Army last year. It was last September, and so like the Army team from September of 2023 to the Army team of November 2024 is dynamically different, you could say. Just from a developmental standpoint, how much bigger, stronger, faster their players are. Like we talk about Bryson Daly, how much he's grown as the captain of the offense just in that 15-month span. But also, they kind of run a different looking offense than what we saw in the Alamodome that day.
Yeah, I think their offensive line is so much better now too. I saw a quote from Lucas Scott, who's their right tackle, one of their best players on offense. He was asked to describe the Army offensive line, and he said, mean, tough, violent. The standard is really, really high in our room. Damn. Doesn't that get the blood flowing? Does it get you pumped up? Would anyone say that about the UTSA offensive line?
Never.
No.
Never. But would they say that about the defensive front? Maybe.
Yeah.
It sounds like the front seven's not going to have as easy of a time getting into the backfield as they did against Temple just a week prior. Whenever you're talking about a mean, tough, and violent offensive line from Army, it's going to be quite the different polar difference.
Right. And Army's just going to play a lot more downfield too. Like Temple was running a lot of like slow developing run plays, like stretches and tosses and stuff like that, where it gave UTSA the chance to go to triple play. But, the triple option for Army is it's too quick, dude. It's bang, 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 bang. And when you do come downfield, they're going to take advantage of that. And they're going to run trap against you. They're going to run counter against you. They're going to run the read option off of you. So UTSA's got to be careful, right? They were playing with kind of reckless abandon against Temple. They're really pinning their ears back, and you got to do the opposite of that against Army. You got to be very, very deliberate. You got to play your gap. You got to play your role. You got to play your assignment, or you're toast. You're absolutely toast.
Jared, this Army team, they've been extremely high output on offense. So 33 points per game. We're talking about whenever, through the month of October, they were regularly putting up 40 burgers against their American athletic opponents. Feels like that scoring output is also very uncharacteristic of Army teams in the past. Are they moving they typically run a very up-tempo speed as far as moving the ball downfield, but how are they getting the end zone so much more than they typically do or have in seasons past?
I would say Bryson Daly is the reason why.
That's it. It's just Superman.
Yeah, just like when you have a quarterback and you run that triple option, your quarterback is a legit threat to get into the end zone. Like, the defense has to make a choice, right? And a lot of times they're going to play that pitch and they're going to try to, kind of give up those quarterback runs. But like Daly can break tackles, right? And in a triple option offense, sometimes if you can make one guy miss, you can break one tackle. There's no one left to stop you, and he's quick enough that he can let those out. So.
Yeah. And then whenever he does have to get rid of it and give it to one of his backs, those guys are really, really good at getting it done. And Kanye Udo and Noah Short.
Yeah, those guys run for 6.5 yards per carry on Udo's resume and 10.2 yards per carry for Noah Short as well. Jeez. 10 yards per carry, and it's the last game of the regular season, man. Give me a break. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Noah Short's really explosive in the pass game as well. They like to target him a lot. Well, he's only had 13 catches this year, but he's got 270 yards and 3 touchdowns off of 13 catches. How do they do it, man?
Yeah, that's insane. And that 13 catches is a high. It ties the program high for the season. Him and Casey Reynolds. Casey Reynolds also 13 receptions on the year.
Yeah, I think
he's 336.
Really their only, yeah, he's like really their only wide receiver target that gets many looks, from my understanding, right?
Like traditional wide receiver. Yeah, getting the ball from a wide receiver position, not a running back, catching those balls. But between Kanye Udo and Noah Short, really, really good ball carriers, man. And then with a guy like Casey Reynolds, that you can throw it upfield to, pretty talented group of guys that can get the ball into the end zone.
Yeah. It's just typical Army, right? They're not often going to have like these major superstars. Obviously, Bryson Daly is that for them this year, but they always have some guys that can play. I mean, guys that were overlooked. They typically come from small towns in Texas, like Bryson Daly did. And I think Army's got a really good core group of those. They've got a really nice offensive line. They know who they are. They play fairly disciplined football. I would say they commit more penalties than I'm used to seeing from an Army team. But man, they play true to themselves, and they don't play with any fear in their heart, man.
Is this
tough to stop?
Is this the toughest matchup for UTSA's defensive front seven? Outside of UT, sure, whatever. Is this going to be by far their biggest test of the year?
It's a good question. I might say Texas State was tougher. That Texas State offensive line was really good, and Ishmael Maldi was a total superstar running back. But
yeah,
Armory's up there with them. It's such a unique challenge though to face the triple option, right? So there's definitely more pressure on the defensive front this week than there's ever been, because if one of those guys messes up, that's a 20, 30-yard play if they don't score, right? So
how do you feel about the ability of that group to handle this Army front? How do you feel about the, Jamori Robinson and Donnie Taylor and Owen Pee Wee and Martavius French stand up?
Yeah, I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be good. I think UTSA's defended against the option pretty well, historically. Even if you think back to last year's game, it was just like those 2-yard, quarterback sneaks that were just killing UTSA, So then it just comes down to the margins, right? Turnovers and stuff like that. So I think they'll hold up okay. I just, I'm worried about the passes over the top, right? We've already seen this season that be a problem for UTSA, where they kind of get cued in a little bit too much on the run and leave those deep shots open. So
yeah,
I think tackling is probably a pretty big concern as well.
Okay. Tackling, I think, is absolutely the biggest concern.
Yeah,
I think they should be able to get home to I think they should be able to have their opportunities to get to the ball carrier and line of scrimmage or short yardage situation. But if they're actually going to be able to bring down the carrier, is a different story. And I think that's how Army has had their success over UTSA over these last couple of matchups during Traylor's era is them beating us at that first contact and then going and getting 4 or 5 more yards to the second level.
Yeah,
and now all of a sudden it's a first down and a first down and another one, and it just chips away at a defense and it really takes them apart.
Yeah, 100%.
How about Army's defense, Jared? Pretty salty. What do they do well?
Yeah, definitely salty. I think the offense is probably a little bit better for them, but the defense is very good as well. It's the same Army defense as always, right? Like they're just so disciplined, right? They just don't make a lot of major mistakes, you know. Um, they got a linebacker, Anton Thomas, one of the best linebackers that they've had in the Monken era. He leads the team with 59 tackles. He's just rock solid. Just really, really good, hard-nosed linebacker. But the guy to know for UTSA fans is Max DiDomenico. So Max is from Clemens Shirts, you know, great friend of Frank Harris. Max's brother was a walk-on at UTSA. I've met Max several times. He used to come to tailgates, right? Overlooked by UTSA. They never offered him. And now he's balling out at Army, man. He's one of the top players on defense. He's got 44 tackles, 2 interceptions, 4 pass breakups. So he's a strong safety for them, but you know they really use him as a linebacker a lot too. You know he's very comfortable playing up near the line of scrimmage. So you know on one hand it's great to see his success and for him to prove the doubters wrong and all of that. But it's also tough because he's probably going to play pretty well against the hometown team this week up in West Point.
So Army leads the American Athletic Conference with 14 interceptions on the season.
Wow.
And granted, they played in 1 less games than everybody else. That's only through 10 games instead of 11. They have let up the second least number of passing touchdowns. Only 11 passing touchdowns have been allowed on the Army defense so far this season.
Which is crazy too, because most of these teams are playing from far behind against Army, right? So they're trying to throw the ball downfield to try to catch up, and still
that's crazy.
Not having much success.
That's crazy.
They've got 3 cornerbacks that are all really good. Justin Weaver, Jaden Mays, and Jabril Williams are all really solid guys, right? They're going to have UTSA receivers locked up pretty well, right? If UTSA's passing game is going to be successful, it's going to be another one of those games where the tight ends really pop off.
Okay, they're going to have to have the whole committee working, all 3 of those.
Yeah, they're going to have to get creative, I think.
That's scary, Jared. I mean, as you think about the rushing game woes that UTSA has had so far this year, really had to lean on Owen McGowan being the savior of this team and getting this offense rolling. Dude, this Army passing defense is just salty. And I think it's going to prove to be the biggest test that Owen McGowan and his receivers have had to go up against.
Probably so.
Yeah, only 191 yards allowed per game through the air on Army's defense.
If there's one, I guess, like saving grace for UTSA or any other Army opponent, Army's defensive line is not as strong as they've been in the past. I mean, they're good overall as a group, right? It's not a weakness, I would say, but you don't really have those like clear standouts on their defensive line this year.
Yeah.
They're still going to give UTSA hell. Right. I don't want people to think that UTSA is going to run all over them or they're going to have a ton of time in the pocket or anything like that. They just don't have like that one guy. You know what I mean?
They've only allowed 4 sacks on the year, Jared. On the year. 4 total.
Yep.
Yeah, not too many guys penetrating.
I wonder how many times Bryson Daly's gotten hit on a dropback and didn't go down.
That's a good question.
It's at least a handful.
That's probably a good question.
Yep.
But they lead in the least number of sacks allowed, the least number of tackles for loss allowed. So they're beefy up front, or they just don't go down whenever they get hit. One or the other. It's working.
Yeah, definitely. It's a tough team, man. It's a tough battle. Yeah. I was very split on if I was going to pick a win for the Roadrunners or not, and I kind of told myself like, let me see how the discussion with Adrian goes and see if that sways me.
Well, I think there's one thing that we have to point to.
Okay.
Army is 9-1.
Yeah.
They pretty much have just played the American Athletic Conference schools.
They played Lehigh and Notre Dame at a conference?
Correct.
Oh, Air Force.
And Air Force.
I think the point you're trying to get to is they played a terribly soft schedule.
I was just going to say, how legitimate is their 9-1 record? Are they as scary as they seem? Because Notre Dame spanked them, which, sure, they're Notre Dame. But for a ranked team that Army was going into that game, you know, do they need to hold their own a little bit better for you to feel, you know, we're not saying just because Notre Dame spanked Army that helps UTSA's chances. But what we're saying is the 9-1 record a little inflated? Maybe. Are they as good as everyone thinks?
I both thought that their record was inflated by their schedule and they weren't quite as good as the schedule showed. But on the other hand, I was also a little bit surprised at how easily Notre Dame just completely dismantled them. Because, I mean, it wasn't even a contest. I mean, Notre Dame had their number from pretty much the first snap of the game, right? Like, there was no hope in Army for that one. And I know Notre Dame's a great team. What are they ranked? They're in the top 10, but I still expected to see a little bit closer of a contest, at least for like the first quarter or two from Army. So,
Sure.
I don't really know what to believe, right? They kind of got exposed a little bit, but obviously it's Notre Dame, right? So,
Army's outscoring their opponents 33-14. Most of their opponents are American Athletic Conference opponents. So it really comes down to which UTSA team shows up. Because if it's a UTSA that played Memphis or played UNT, they've got a puncher's chance in making this very, very interesting, very, very difficult for Army. If it's a UTSA that played against Tulsa, Rice, ECU, Temple, we're going to get our asses kicked. And there's no sugarcoating that.
Yeah.
Roadrunners had to play their best football that they played to have a chance at beating this Army team. Because if there's anything that the Army is going to do right, it's they're not going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Can't afford it. UTSA has got to be nearly perfect. And on average, we've been very, very far from that. We tend to get in our own way a lot. And we talked about it just after a 51-point win against Tulsa. We spent a large part of that game recap talking about what the staff and players did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
This team is who they are. I can't sit here and think UTSA is going to go to West Point and only commit 2 penalties.
There's no way.
There's just no way. There's no way that happens. But are they able to pony up their talent to give Army some hell? Yeah, they are.
Totally.
Jared, I can't in good faith predict a win for this Roadrunners team against this Army team, and it sucks.
There's nothing on paper that should tell you that UTSA is going to win this one.
Correct.
Right? Like, there's no stat that you can point to or anything like that. The results, the previous 11 games don't point towards it. But I'm still going to pick them.
UTSA was only favored by odds makers by 1 single touchdown against the Memphis Tigers. They won that game despite a 9-1 record against a 6-5 UTSA team. Las Vegas has the spread at 7.5 points for the Army. That is a 1 touchdown game, Jared. Yeah. UTSA.
I'm going to say Owen McCown plays an awesome game against Army. And I think that UTSA is going to take their lumps. It's not going to be a beautiful, crisp game. Army's going to muck it up. But I feel like you're going to get some big plays in the air, right? Even though Army's pass defense is great, I think Justin Burke's going to call a great game. They're going to do some creative stuff to get some guys some mismatches. And I think UTSA is going to move the ball, right? I think Owen McCown's going to do another thing that Frank never did, beat a ranked opponent and do it on the road, right? And it's kind of just a gut feeling for me too. I mean, our Army's already got their spot locked up for the championship game, right? If Daly gets banged up, they're going to be quick to pull him. So it's just a gut pick for me, nothing else. I think UTSA is moving in the right direction. I think they're, Temple wasn't their best ball, but generally speaking, they're playing their best ball towards the end of the season. I think Army will bounce back mentally from the Notre Dame game, but I think it's going to plant a little bit out in their head, right? So give me the Roadrunners to squeak out a win, 24-23, man. I think it's going to be a great one, a classic. I think Owen McCown's really going to cement his legacy, send these seniors out with a guaranteed winning season and get us into the bowl season. Or I'm going to feel really stupid in a week. We'll see. One or the other.
I am blown away. I've been doing this podcast with Jared for a long time, and I don't think he has ever made a game pick based off of a hunch, ever. Whether that be good or bad. I don't think he's ever gone off of a hunch pick. And if he were to go off a hunch pick...
I kind of did it for North Texas. Like, I told JD, I'm picking UTSA over North Texas because I don't see Jeff Traylor losing to 2 Texas schools in the same season. And that was, like, my only thing in that game at the time.
And I also feel like in like years past, like if Jared was gonna have a hunch based pick, it was gonna be like negative, not positive.
Yeah.
Like
And this team they haven't really built up like benefit of doubt with us this year either.
Jared making a positive UTSA pick on a hunch is like it's maybe the craziest thing that's ever happened on this podcast before.
Yeah.
And it
I'll grant you that. But also,
almost...
UTSA's defensive front is so solid. They're so legit, right? That's a big reason why, too. I mean, that is the one data point there. I mean, statistically, UTSA is one of the best run defenses in the whole country.
Really, really, really difficult for me hearing this to bet against Jared, but I've got Army 27, Roadrunners 20 in a very hard fought, brutally fought game that we come up just a little bit short in. By way of a couple too many penalties and mistakes.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, let's just hope for less than 8 penalties in this game. That should be the benchmark.
Over under, yes. I mean, what's the over under to beat Army? Is it 5? You have to be less than 5?
I think they have to be under 5 to beat Army.
Probably. Yeah, six or more. You can't beat Army. I don't think so.
Yep, I think you're right.
So, I've got 6 penalties and a loss. I hope I'm wrong, Jeff.
Well, either way, at least we got one more game to preview together. I'm very thankful for that.
Very thankful indeed, and a happy Thanksgiving to all the Dome heads out and about. We do have to have a special thank you to a particular list of Dome heads. That's our Patreon subscribers, the big money donors. Shout out to Ben Tovar, the Bunch family, Zach Espericueta, and the San Antonio Podcast Network, Alejandro Benavides, Dan Nerdahl, our host of Around the Bird Bath, Jacob Cavazos, board president for the UTSA Alumni Association, John Nally, Rick Cortez of Rowdy Road Grillers, Sumner McDaniel, UTSA King Bowser, Maddie, and Home Field Apparel, where if you haven't purchased any UTSA gear yet, you can save 15% on your first order with the discount code UTSA Wants Home Field. That's UTSA Wants Home Field to save 50% off your first order. Jared, one more regular season game, and then we get some extra Roadrunners football for the free.
Yeah, we got early signing day coming up too. UTSA putting together, a rising class, I would say, after a slow start to the recruiting cycle. So lots to look forward to. Another thing to look forward to is we've got a really great bonus episode for you guys this week. We actually already recorded it. It is our send-off podcast for the senior class, a group that's just changed the face of this program, of this university. They went out with a great senior night win over Temple. And we sent them out with a great podcast as well, kind of talking about some memories of some of those guys and talking about their development at UTSA, how they got there and all of that. So a lot of fun. I think those are the episodes that Asia and I enjoy the most. And I hope you guys will enjoy listening to it on your travels to wherever you may be heading this holiday weekend. And I hope you guys will drive safe out there. Check out the Patreon. And we'll see you guys back next week.